Well, welcome to Rochdale on this not quite as sunny Saturday as I thought it was going to be, and I had all sorts of plans today to make a couple of really fantastic videos, but best laid plans of mice and men. I couldn't get my homework done properly last night because something turned up. But what I thought I'd do, I've come to investigate some sites for those stories, places I've never been on foot before, so I thought, well, why not just put it together on a bit of an explanation video for a start before we go into some of the stories. So that's what I'm going to do. So here we are for a start on Leech Lane, and we're looking for two pits, Leech, which is straight in front of us, and also Stoney Heys. I've got to find that. So we'll explain on this just a little bit where these pits are and a bit about the geology and that. Then we can get back to the real stories on them. Okay, so we're going to have a good look at Leech. From what we know, we can see this is the site of the colliery from where we are now stood. As far as we know, the colliery goes back to the early 1850s. It was worked by the lord of the manor, James Dearden. However, what we do know is back in about 1795, when the leases were first got off Lord Byron, one of the first collieries they worked was at Ending, or they called it Hendon, and I think Leech is possibly an extension of that. And even though we're looking at this area where the shafts were, originally it was actually a drift mine or a straight tunnel driven into the hill. As we can see here, here's the cabin over the straight tunnel, the drift running into the hill. And I've looked and looked and looked at these plans, and from what I can tell, this now lays beneath the mill, where it says Marathon at the beginning of the video. And can we see all these old workings or old hallows? And I think some of them possibly at this side are up to the Hendon Colliery. So this is in the Lower Mountain mine, which was about 16-inch thick, that's all. So this is the second plan we've got, a lot later. It dates from about 1905. Now there seems to have been quite a bit of a redevelopment in the first decade of the 20th century where Deardens are concerned, right down from freeholds all the way down. So here we are with these two shafts, with a heap that we're stood up looking at. The first shaft there, the 22 yards deep down to the lower foot coal, and only 10 yards to the lower mountain. We've got a geological fault there, and again 22 yards down to the foot coal, but they couldn't find the lower mountain. Now as we zoom out, we can see this red line, and this, when we talk about Stoney Heys, can we see workings by Fishwick's royalty. So this is the Stoney Heys coal. This wall there is a boundary. Then if we look, this is the lower foot coal, 7 inches thick. You wouldn't think it was worth working. There's a lot of fire clay underneath it, but look at the amount of coal that's been worked. Can you see? It's quite extensive, isn't it? And again, we've got those two shafts on that heap. But here we have, look, a tramway on the surface and a drift going in there. That's interesting, isn't it? And we can't see that now because it's all built on. There's no sign of it whatsoever. And again, our drift going in that's under Marathon Mill there, and an air pit. For now, there's a lot of unanswered questions.
there we've got Road Lane, and on the plans and all the maps it shows a row of houses up there, and it shows the shaft just further down here past the quarry. And the pit was run by Fishwicks, who also run the main one that I was going to do a story on, which is Brotherod. They also had Stoney Heys here, which was a shaft down to the Sandrock, and also to the, I think they were the upper foot mine as well. Right, so we're in the area of Stoney Heys Colliery now. That's the path going up towards Healy Stones. This is the road that comes across, and the shaft, there's no sign of it at all now, but it's down just in the bottom down here. There's just nothing at all to show that it would be here. There's not even any disturbed ground. Well, this is where the Stoney Heys Colliery was, the shaft was, down to the Sandrock. I suppose there's a little bit of a mound. There you can see. That's all that gives it away. So there's a shaft here, shafts at Leech, and also there was some drifts. And I know Jack Nadin in his book, one of his books, talked about somebody going in one of the drifts in the 1840s and getting buried and killed.
So Stoney Heys Colliery, if we look on the 1891 map, the 25-inch, here we had, this is the shaft that we've visited, Stoney Heys. There's Leech and there's Stoney Heys, and if you notice there's that quarry. However, if we look back on the first ordnance sheet, there's the quarry, and we see the colliery isn't there, but it puts the colliery here. And actually when we had Desi up, I did see something there, or near there. It turns out that what I saw is just behind there. So that it shows Stoney Heys Colliery there, but here's a bit of a twist. This plan has come to light, and it's actually Nook Colliery, which was worked by Fishwicks, and I think this plan dates to 1844. These are some of the Nook pit workings, but Stoney Heys, it shows there, it actually shows the pit top there. And if we zoom in, we can see the shaft and the buildings. There's no sign of that now. And we'll go back to the 1844 map, and it's actually here where this R is. I don't know what R is for, whether it's for ruin, but it doesn't show it on there. Now the reason I think that other plan is 1844 is because it's a plan of Nook Colliery. Now where's the Nook pit? Well, actually it's here, and this was run by Fishwicks. And there was no point going to it because it doesn't exist anymore. Can we see it's right in the middle of the estate? There's the Gale. In fact, that's the old pit road to Nook Colliery. So there was no point in us going looking at that. So Stoney Heys here. Let's have a look at some of the plans of the pit. So these are the Sandrock workings. This is the shaft that we visited. It's actually 21 yards down to the coal, and the seam averages only 11 inches thick. I didn't look for the air pit actually, did I? Now Dickinson marks entrance to another colliery on here, on Rhodes Lane, and one up here as well. So next time we go, we'll maybe have a look for those. But this is the boundary of the Stoney Heys royalty here, this red line. On the other side, we've got obviously Leech and Dearden's land. And the pit also worked the upper foot mine. This is a plan of it here. Again, there's the shaft, and it looks like there's possibly a drift going in there, isn't there? What's that into? Could it perhaps be into the lower mountain, going back towards the Nook Colliery? I don't know. But we can see the two Leech shafts, and that does look to go into the Stoney Heys workings, doesn't it? So it seemed to finish around about 1878. So there we are, Stoney Heys.
So they worked everything here. They've worked the foot mine and the lot. They've just taken everything they possibly can. And while we're here, we may as well have a look at the Healy Stones, mightn't we? Can't not do. Anyway, what I'm going to try and do now, the plan is to get up to Brotherod, which is the other pit owned by Fishwicks. That was the main pit, and then see if I can get on to find Ellenrod. That's the plan. Right, we're just off Mizzy Road. We're on Mizzy Road, and this is Cronkyshaw Common. And I said we were going up to Brotherod, but this was part of the Brotherod complex. Well, should I call it a complex? They were sinking a new shaft near here. I'm not going to show you exactly where it was because that's not fair on the home owner, and we'll go into the story of it when we do the proper story on the pit, because there was a really serious accident here, and it kind of, the pit never went on after that. The shaft was never sunk to the coal, I don't think. Coal was never worked here, and it looks like Brotherod closed after that. Now, Cronkyshaw Common, I've seen that a few times when I've been looking at different pieces of history, and I'm sure quite a few, what's the word, sort of protest marches, for want of a better word, started off here. I'm not sure, I'll have to check, that in 1842, now a lot of people know it as the Plug Riots, but it was a general strike really, and there was a massive march set off from Rochdale, went up through Whitworth into Bacup, and I think it separated, and some went across over into Todd and walked all the way back to Littleborough and back down into Rochdale. Now, they'd have been hungry, bare feet with clogs, well, no stockings on and clogs on, and they dragged themselves all that way. That was some feat. Young lasses amongst them as well. But I'm sure that march set off from Cronkyshaw Common. And like I said, I've seen its name come up a few times as sort of a meeting place for these sort of things. Bit of history back to 1842. Well, let's see if I can find where this shaft was. Ish. It was situated up that street really. It's not fair to show exactly where it was. It's clearly shown on the 1891 25-inch map, Morgan. Well, it's opposite Cronkyshaw Common. Quite a disastrous thing that occurred there back in the 1870s. Well, let's try and get up to Brotherod itself now, to the mother pit. This is where a lot of the urban explorers kind of come up to the old asbestos factory. But what's more interesting for us as industrial historians, well, mining historians, is further up than that. We'll give the asbestos works a miss, I think. And obviously it was once a very major employer, important employer in the area. Photographs of busloads of people turning up here. It was a massive industrial complex, and of course asbestos was the wonder stuff, wasn't it? They used it in films, snow scenes and things, in Singing in the Rain, I think, or White Christmas, one of the two. More likely to be White Christmas than Singing in the Rain, isn't it? I think it was used in The Wizard of Oz as well. It was like snow and what have you, when they were on the Yellow Brick Road and it all started falling and that. But I remember back in 1977, was it the Queen's Silver Jubilee? Yeah, it would have been, wouldn't it? And on the driving gate, we had a bonfire between the driving gate and Goodshire Lane behind Paul Beasley's house. It was me, Paul Beasley, Brian Leyland, Dave Leyland, and Love Days, Mick and Chris. And can you remember the old garage roofs, the outside garages that had asbestos? Yeah, they had asbestos on them. And we were tearing off sheets of asbestos garage roofs and chucking them on our Queen's Jubilee bonfire, just an excuse to set a fire going, and watching it explode, thinking it was fun. Asbestos sheets. Well, finding it isn't that easy, but there's pit shale here, and the map shows it near the weir. There's a road going off there. We're not far off where the pit was. Now, Jack in his book said there's no trace of it, but I'm sure I've seen on one of the Urban Explorers videos, like a shaft marker. I mean, there's plenty of pit shale here. That is a fact. Like I said, there was a shaft marker on that. One of those Urban Explorers. They were like father and son, young son, and he was stood next to one of them. Forget his name now. Seek and you shall find. It's there. just in front of us. I'm not going to say it's all that's left of Brotherod. We'll have a look, see if there's any more. But this is basically what the urban explorers miss. I know the father and son, they mentioned it, but they wouldn't do, you know, they wouldn't know much history on it. So look at my map again. So looking at the map, this is actually the air shaft, the air pit, and the main winding shaft was in the complex, in the Turner's complex there, just the other side of this road. It's just going to be there in them trees there. That's where the main coal winding shaft was and the pit top was. Obviously it's out of bounds now, and more than likely there's diddly squat of it left. Somebody's got a drone up. He's practicing his moves, isn't he? Don't want Desi getting involved in a dog fight, do we? So, could this be the remains of the lodge? Looks like it's been summoned, doesn't it? I think this has been the lodge. You can see it clearly on the map. We're on Caldershire Business Park now, and I'm looking for any remains of Ellenrod. Ellenrod was in at least 3 different sort of places over the years, and we've got some information going back to about 1802, but it looks like I won't hold any hope of it being left. Well, it's at the back of here, and this is the site of the I won't say famous water engine, but we've been trying to do a bit of research and ask some questions about the water engine, and it was at this site. But it's all overgrown. They built all these new units where the big mill was. You never know, we might find something. Looking at the map again, it's up here. There's an old lane, Caldershire Lane, that goes at the top end of the buildings here, but it looks like it isn't here anymore if you look behind us. Well, this looks like the old lane, so we better look. We might find something left of the pit. Not going to be easy to find. I mean, there's lots of bricks here, some glazed, but they could be from the old mill. But it's kind of in this sort of area. I mean, some of them are Stoney Heys, so can't be that, but we've got this sort of clearing here.
So I was looking on the 1891 map while I was wandering around, and we can see the shaft there. And if we open it up, you can see it in the woods. There's the units, and there's Caldershire Lane where it used to run through those units. Unfortunately, I should have looked at the first ordnance sheet, because that is the actual water shaft, and there's nothing at all left of it, as you'll see. Looking on the first sheet, we can see Coal Pit Road, which is like Caldershire Lane now, and there we've got Ellenrod, the main sort of pit head at that particular time. And if we open it up, there we have the water shaft there where I was kind of looking, but the main pit head, the main winding shaft, is in the houses. If we look, can we see? And I wasn't looking at that. What a shame I didn't look. And then we've got the other shaft that I didn't go to. There we are. But again, there's nothing left of it. It's in those houses there. There's nothing left of it at all. Now, there's also a further site that could be to do with this lodge here, but we'll have a look. Now, water engine. There's another water engine at Shawfield Colliery there. Can we see? So, is it a water engine that acts like a steam engine? Is it a water wheel? Until we find some documentation, we're just not going to know, are we? Now, was Shawfield owned by the same owners as Ellenrod? We know Ellenrod certainly at one time was owned by Dearden, the Lord of the Manor. And this is from part of an old plan. So you've got engine pit and old pit, and these are showing some of the underground levels. And this survey was done in 1838. We do have some information going back to about 1808 as well, to do with where a steam engine was put. And this was another survey done in 1840, is that 1846? And sadly, it looks like it's kind of destroyed there, where the colliery is, although it does show bent pit there. So comparing the two now, here we've got where we were looking for, the water engine, which is here. I've definitely got it. And the lane down to the bent mine. Now, the bent mine isn't shown on here. That's Fisher Field. There's Fisher Field. That's Ellenrod. There's Ellenrod. And that's the colliery shown there. And the road comes around to here, where this reservoir is. There's a shaft there where the old lodge is. And the bent mine, which is there, is going to be in this field. Now then, the interesting thing is there's chance that some of that may still be there, because it's round about here. There's no building work being done. Sadly, the other shaft that's shown there is not on any of these maps, any of the plans anywhere. These are the only maps or plans we've got of the old Ellenrod Colliery.
Sadly, it looks like there's just nought left of it. It's all overgrown, sort of scrubby woodland. Nothing left to show for what was here in the 1840s and 50s. Yeah, but we came and saw this is the sort of area it was in, all this lot here where those trees are. I'm going as much as we can off the map, you know, that shows the 1891 map, and then opens up onto Google Earth off the 25-inch. This is it. This is where we are, as accurate as that map may be. This is where Ellenrod was with the water engine and that. Just all overgrown now. Not even a bit of pit muck anywhere. Scone. Right, so to have a look at some of these others that I was going to look at today on the story. Certainly Meadowcroft Lane is where we were going to have the main story. You would never think there was a pit on Meadowcroft Lane now, and where the pit was is a massive big house now. That and the pub at the bottom, the Elephant and Castle, there was a big incident there from a strike in 1846, which we're going to talk about when we get the video. But further this way is the Bowling Green Colliery, and again you would never think it was there. And then the other side of Bury Road is the Brotherod Colliery, and then not so far, but going up into the what I think is going into the golf club, you've got Chadwick Hall Colliery. So this was a big mining area back in the 1840s. Look on the first OS map. I'll give you a bit of an idea for a start where Bowling Green was. So this is the area where the pit was, Bowling Green Colliery. I know not a lot about it, but I have found a newspaper cutting about Bowling Green Farm. I'm trying to do a bit more research on Bowling Green Colliery. It's Meadowcroft we're really interested in, which was owned by Roscoe and Lord. They also own Chadwick Hall. Roscoe and Lord, quite famous is the wrong word, but they're very prominent amongst Rochdale collieries, and quite a few disasters at their pits as well. Some really interesting stories. For instance, the colliery in Birtle, there was an inundation where people died. There was a massive fire at another one of their pits, which is going over towards Farnworth or Failsworth. Stoney Heys, is it? No, Stoney Heys is where we've been today. Anyway, we're going to get stuck into some Roscoe and Lord stuff. And Roscoe and Lord, Thomas Roscoe was actually interviewed for the 1842 Shaftesbury Act. He's actually in there at his colliery in Rochdale, and there's an illustration of one of his collieries underground. We're not sure which one it is, just says at Mr. Roscoe's pit near Rochdale. Possibly Chadwick Hall. But if we look at it now, these are all big houses. Lots of them have got gates, locked gates. You would never know this was a coal mining area. And beneath us here, we've got the Royally coal seam, which is the Arley, one of the premier coals of the country. So Meadowcroft Colliery is in there behind us. You wouldn't think so, would you? And going in the 1840s, like I said, it looks quite a substantial pit. And if we have a look on the geological survey sheet now, it gives us the shaft depths. But in a way, I'm glad we couldn't do the video today proper on Meadowcroft and the 1846 strike, because as I've tried to look into the story, it's opening up, and some of the protagonists and other people that are involved, especially the solicitor who stands up for the miners, really important. He's really a very influential figure and a historical figure as far as miners' union is concerned, also not only in Lancashire but also in the northeast. Now, you mightn't be into history of trade unions, but it is important, because it is important, so don't lose interest. So excuse my ignorance of Rochdale history. This looks like then it must be the original pub where our story is going to take place. If you know for sure, let me know. But it was originally a farm. There was a farm attached to it as well. Situated down here was the old Brotherod Colliery. Again, it's going to feature in the story where they nicked the steam engine. But again, the pit was taken over and later again run by Roscoe and Lord. There's the Elephant and Castle. There's going to be absolutely no sign of it now because it's all been built on. That's the trouble. Like I said, you would never ever think, especially looking at that tree, that there was ever any collieries here, would you? At least we've made a bit of a video out of where we intended to go, and I found some things, haven't we? I found obviously where Ellenrod was going to be, but looking at it on the 1844 map, half of it is buried under the new houses, and as I will have pointed out, and what you can see on the 1891 map is actually the water shaft, or the shaft where it looks like the water engine was. We found Brotherod, Leech, Stoney Heys, and we've found where the Elephant and Castle is, and Meadowcroft. So this is just like a bit of a field study video, innit? We look forward to doing the real thing, several different videos. So thanks for watching. Catch you later.